USDA's first cattle report of 2016 shows nearly 92 million head of cattle and calves in the U.S. as of January 1st. That's 3% higher than a year ago. All but 3 states increased their inventories or held steady compared to January 1st of 2015. The only states to see declines were Delaware, Louisiana, and Maine. On Wednesday, we talked with Nebraska Extension livestock economist Kate Brooks for her analysis of the agency's latest estimates.
I think we saw, as expected, we knew we were increasing the herds there throughout 15. We had less slaughter cows going to the market. We saw less heifers coming to the market. So we expected increases across the board, and we saw those going into this report.
You said it's important to note that there were adjustments made to 2015 numbers, meaning what?
Meaning we saw a lot of increases that were higher than what we had initially expected. And what we saw happen was a lot of the January 1, 15 numbers were actually lowered or adjusted. So for instance, all cattle and calves came in at 92 million, up 3.2%. But those are larger than what was expected because the 15 was revised down about 650,000 head. So the growth in 14 was only about 0.7% increase in all cattle and calves. So we saw a bigger increase there in 15.
Same thing going in Nebraska as the rest of the states?
To some extent, yes. The big one was heifers held for beef cow replacement here in Nebraska. The 15 numbers were revised up about 30,000 head. So it looks, when initially anticipated, we had thought we had seen about a 2.5% decline in beef heifers held for replacement in 15 over 14. And then when we look at the 16 now, it's showing that we actually saw about a 5% increase in the January 1, 15 over 14 and a 7.1% decline in the 16 over 15.
Tell me about the big states that are accounting for the majority of beef cows right now.
Right, so the 5 largest states that make up about 38% of the U.S. herd include Texas and Oklahoma, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Dakota. And of those 5 states, they make up about 46% of the increase in all of the beef cow numbers.
And perhaps the key point is all states there are doing quite well for moisture?
Yes, those are a lot of the states in the plains that have really started to see some improvements in the last year or so in moisture conditions.
So the key word with these inventory reports for the last few years has been rebuilding. What does this show about how producers have been rebuilding the U.S. cow herd?
We've been rebuilding it at a rapid pace. Coming out, we knew 14 had been start of that rebuild. 15, we knew we were rebuilding at a rapid pace, and as these numbers show, we really did expand the herd at rapid paces. There was a lot of profitability potential in areas for cow-calf production, a lot of declines in corn prices, as well as a lot of improvements in pasture conditions throughout 15 that really ramped up that production level, especially with the potential for some of those cow-calf returns.
Has it started to level off? If not, what would cause it to?
I think 16 will be that initial phase of whether or not we're going to keep at this pace. I don't know that we'll continue to see this pace of increases in the cow herd numbers. Drought's a big thing. If that creeps back in, it can slow it down. The other one is prices and whether or not we can continue to see that cow-calf profitability potential or those high returns that we've seen in the past years.
So the market took this inventory report pretty much calmly, yes?
To some extent, we did have some adjustments there. We've continued to see volatility in the markets. If you've been watching the futures markets particularly, just because there's a lot of things going on. We're at record high prices still, not compared to 14, but we're still sitting in 13 prices.
What's your expectation on how those markets move as we go to spring?
As we go to spring, we know there's a lot more calves out there. We've been increasing the herd. There's a lot of calves outside of the feedlots that are still going in. And so, as we see more pressure of those coming to market, we might start to see prices come down some more.
You touched on this, but just how difficult do you think profitability will be this year for producers?
LMIC's estimates for all of the U.S. is predicting still some profitability potential there. The budgets out of UNL that Roger Wilson put together are starting to show some negatives coming up. A lot of that has to do with how you value your land and some of those values there. But as prices start to come down, we know things like cash rents have been relatively high still. Land values are relatively high. So it's going to start affecting some of those producers.
Those 2016 budgets for cow-calf production from Roger Wilson and the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Ag Economics team can be found through a link on the Market Journal website. You can also see Kate across Nebraska next week at the Beef Feedlot Roundtables in West Point on Tuesday, Lexington on Wednesday, and Scottsbluff on Thursday.